Welcome to a new video. Let's take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. If you like the content, don't forget to subscribe. Also, please leave a like if you enjoy it. The first story is called, "You Are Calling Security on Me?" A couple of months ago, I was doing some IT support for a country music concert. The concert was out in a big field and the venue wanted to be able to take credit cards in the middle of this field. There are no cell towers around, so the typical devices wouldn't work unless connected to a network. Here's where I come in. This Wi-Fi network was also in use by the stagehands, producers, support staff, and the artists, so it got a little congested at times. I told everyone up front we were prioritizing credit card transactions and to just deal with it. Most everyone understood, but some of the artists were prima donnas. I was staying on site for the event. I had been up since roughly 4 because I had to vacate my dwelling for an artist after having gone to bed around midnight. I had been at this venue all week, setting things up, and was not in a good mood anyway. All day, we had issues with our network because we had almost 10,000 people around and things kept getting congested or broken. Fast forward to about 9. I get this call over the radio that says, "Internet is down at the artist tent." So I respond and head over there. Keep in mind, I'm wearing just a t-shirt and jeans, not advertising the venue or the event. But I do have a radio, so I'm somewhat official. I pull up outside the tent with my four-wheeler and trailer attached because I was helping the trash guys get some of the places cleaned up. It had been over 90 degrees and I had been outside all day. I'm tired, cranky, hot, burnt, and generally not a nice person. I walk into the tent and I hear this voice from the other side of the tent say, "If you don't leave, I'm calling security." I turn around, thinking the person is talking to someone else, and the artist points at me and says again, "If you don't leave, I'm calling security." I said, "Go ahead, just quit complaining about your internet being down." He backpedaled pretty quickly and said, "You're the internet guy? You can stay." I wasn't having a good day, so I said, "No. Call security. I want to see what happens." Then I turned around and started fixing the issue. Pretty soon, this other person walks in and says, "Is there an issue?" And the artist pointed at me. The security guy looks my way and says, "That is your issue?" The artist nodded and the security guy said, "Good luck with that." He turned around and left. The next story is called, "You Must Check Everyone." When I was fresh out of college and moved back home to save up money to pursue my career, I got a job at a chain restaurant that was super corporate. But I made some friends for life and met my wife there, and it was a page in the book. At one point in my term there, we had a staff meeting where we were sat down and told we had to ID everyone, no exceptions. No matter how old they looked. If they were buying alcohol, we had to check them, as it was somehow some part of a law that was either new or just now going to be enforced. Not by the company, rather by the regulatory agencies. This sort of thing is a nuisance because I am not going to fall for 3 kids stacked in a trench coat. I know when and when not to ID based on appearance, and take my ego out of this, the people you ID have the same feeling about it. 80-year-old people were giving me the "Are you serious?" look, and questioning my intelligence, despite me trying to explain I am required to do it. Of course, the pushback became tiresome, and wouldn't you know it, the first time I decided to let it slide and did not demand an ID, it was for a 60-year-old judge who let my manager know I neglected my duty. After the table left, I got chewed out by the manager, written up, and he emphasized that no matter what, if there was alcohol in the drink, I would demand an ID or be fired. Fine, my bad, never again. A couple of weeks later and I am bartending and I get a guy who has been in before but is a cantankerous old guy, who the regulars have even complained about. He asks for a brand of beer and without even thinking, I ask for his ID. I realize what I'd done. This beer is considered a non-alcoholic since it has less than 5% alcohol. But this guy is a never-tipping leech, and the same manager who issued the edict that anything with alcohol requires an ID was on duty. Funnily enough, he had forgotten his ID. Perfect. So I stood fast, and it leads to him asking for my manager. My favorite regulars bore witness to me stating my case for the angry manager under fire and his back and forth with the angry leech, and ultimately, since I followed orders, I was absolved of guilt and made extra cash since my regulars always showed appreciation for some spectacle. My manager hated the situation from all sides and just asked me to please find a way to navigate this policy until the lunacy is over. That confrontation, between a man who felt he shouldn't have to show the ID for a non-alcoholic beer and someone who had made his bed by not considering this potentiality and drawing a line, was too satisfying, but only because both victims deserved some heartache. Today in my state, at most places I go, they say, "If you look over 35, you are good." The third story is called, "I Make an Effort to Make Your Job Miserable." I worked at the movies for about 2 years. The first few days I would work during daytime and follow someone along cleaning the hallways, bathrooms and the 8 theaters with a dustpan brush and greeting and seating guests. Because the daytime shift was so quiet, you were also asked to clean all of the furniture and the canteen for the employees and do some chores in the kitchen. The manager was quite strict and gave us a list of chores, the maximum time we could spend on a chore, and she would inspect afterward. The employee who was supposed to teach me was working there for quite some years, and the manager asked him to give her advice on whether she should hire me or not after the first few days. This all sounds quite okay with me, and I start my first day. The employee gives me a tour of the building, including the secret smoking room far away from the canteen and manager office where he liked to spend his time waiting for the shift to end. He then stayed there and told me to do all the chores, or otherwise he would tell the manager I am not a good worker and she shouldn't hire me. Since he was working there for a long time, I didn't think the manager would take me seriously if I would go to her about it, so I decided to mess with him otherwise. Turns out the regular staff always did their chores with a lot of breaks and easy going, making sure management wouldn't cut their time for it. So I worked as hard and fast as I could. I did all of the chores in half the time they were usually done and asked the manager if she could inspect me. If she asked where my coworker was, I would tell her I didn't know, or in the bathroom, or probably doing something else, so I wasn't making a bad impression. But she did get some doubts. After a few weeks, they cut all the time on the chores in half and the managers started checking the smoking room to see if any coworkers were secretly taking breaks. I don't mind some hard work and had a lot of fun. It was also a great workout. Some of the others left or were fired or just had to work a lot harder to keep their job. The next story is called "Manager Does Not Want to Help." When I was in high school, I had a part-time job working at a local restaurant. One day, I came in and was scheduled to wash dishes. No big deal. I walked into the back and came to find out that the morning shift did not have a dishwasher, therefore there was a mountain of dishes. On top of all of that, we got slammed at night. As a minor, I was required to take a 30-minute break in order to work my full shift. As I clocked out for my break, I asked my manager if she could have someone cover my position while I was on break to prevent an even worse situation than the one that was already at hand. She responded, "I won't be able to. You'll just have to stay late and finish it." An important thing to keep in mind is that this manager was notoriously lazy and unhelpful. She never lended a helping hand to get things done faster. She would rather stay 3 hours past close sitting in the office waiting for us to finish our closing duties instead of coming out and helping and getting everything done in a timely manner. She also was not very familiar with child labor laws in Ohio. Since I was a minor, not only did I have to take a 30-minute break, I also could not work past 11 on school nights. So, after clocking back in from my break, I resumed washing the mountain of dishes that had accumulated. I took my time and didn't rush to get everything cleaned, but also wasn't going extremely slow on purpose. 1 minute before I had to go, I walk into the office to tell her that I am leaving. She asked, "Is everything done?" And I said, "No. It's a Wednesday night. I can't work past 11. You know, labor laws. I left the water turned on for you. There's still a lot left." The look on her face was priceless. I clocked out with the biggest smile on my face, knowing that she was going to have to leave the office and do something for once. I asked another manager the next day to see what time she clocked out. It was after 1. The last story is called "Taking on My Boss." I'd been working for a big telecommunication company in the United Kingdom as a senior technical reporter for 16 years. All was well. I was highly qualified and my job dealt with local government, so I had clearance. I enjoyed it and my company had supported me when I had to take 3 months off 2 years ago with a serious health condition. But then I got a new boss. We'll call her Helen. Helen was actually part of our wider team, a fellow reporter who was promoted. Actually, she was best friends with the senior manager, so think about it as you like. The power went straight to her head and she started reprimanding people for random things, like disrespect for questioning a process change which would double the time it took to do it. She wanted to make her stamp on the job, despite it all working fine until then. Unable to deal with Helen, my colleague Jim hands his notice in. Jim is a technical architect, a role I did some years ago before taking a sideways move into reporting. His customer is huge and it takes him forever to do his job, especially with all of Helen's changes. Before he leaves, I get called into an informal chat, which turned out to Helen informing me they're not backfilling Jim. They're making a cost saving, for which she will get a bonus. Instead, my role was to be a technical reporting architect for both customers. I said, "But those are 2 jobs." I was shocked. "Which part of each are you proposing I drop to even make this remotely possible?" "As you can expect," she said, "we're not dropping anything. It's perfectly fine for you to do both." I don't believe what she is telling me and say, despite whether you think it is, I don't agree. I see Jim struggle every day. It's why he's leaving. I don't want to do 2 jobs. I have my health to think about. She is literally scoffing at me now. You're not so special. I must point out here that my serious health condition was PTSD and a nervous breakdown after far too many things happening in a short time frame. She then goes on to say that she doesn't believe in mental health and I should prepare to have my handover from Jim. So I ask her to check with human resources whether what she's doing is legal, as it's a change of role with no new contract. This really got her angry and the meeting ends. A week later, she hauls me into a stress review meeting which, when I arrived, was a reprimand. In order to try and be as maliciously compliant as she could, she'd written down all 11 things I'm supposed to have done wrong. The idea being that I'd end up being written up and, should I betray her again, fired. Some of the things were, being miserable. Yes, I got in trouble for being sad. Refusing to take on Jim's role and being awkward due to my so-called health problems. She faked a customer complaint. As it turns out, I wasn't the only one she did this to. Not attending a meeting she ran weekly. I went back through my mail to find the email she'd sent me saying my attendance wasn't required as I used a different system due to my customer. She said I was skating on thin ice and if I wasn't willing to pick up the extra work, then why come back at all after Christmas? This was late December. Okay then. The day after New Year's, I called in sick. She was right, I had no intention whatsoever of doing 2 jobs. I had 16 lovely weeks off with my family, at full pay, whilst I prepared all my evidence to take the company to court for bullying. That was easy enough since she was stupid enough to email it to me. But it never got to court. The entire department was made redundant due to mismanagement, and on top of my redundancy package, I was paid for the remainder of the year plus all my holidays. I got a better paid job the day after I handed my laptop in. My new boss is absolutely lovely and my new company treats me with respect. And I can see boats and ducks from my office window. She did not lose her job. Her friend promoted her to another department where she's universally hated and back to her old tricks. She is even going so far as to ring ex-employees' new managers to tell them they made a mistake hiring them. But hey, karma will get her in the end. All my colleagues were quite happy to be made redundant as they were on the verge of quitting and all have secured better, friendlier jobs. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. And don't forget to hit the like button. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comment section below. Have a great day.